In the southern region, all Florida cannabis legalization campaigns fall short. So short and sweet. 3 campaigns to put a cannabis legalization question on Florida's ballot have failed, meaning the state's last path forward on the issue this year is its political polarized legislator. Some good news out of Mississippi. So Mississippi governor signs medical cannabis legalization bill. Governor Reeves signed the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act, the MMCA, on February 2nd, 2022. 22222, which legalizes the use of medical marijuana by registered patients suffering from a broad range of medical conditions. Mississippi is now the 37th state with a medical cannabis program. The Mississippi Department of Revenue, or MDOR, will issue medical cannabis dispensary licenses, with the MDOR issuing all other license types. So here's a really great summary from the attorneys over at Vicente Cederberg. So let's unpack this a little bit further. Here are the key takeaways from the 445-page act. License structure. Vertical integration is permitted, but not required. Non-competitive application process. So there is no limit on the number of cannabis facility licenses the state will issue. However, no individual or entity may have a direct or indirect ownership or economic interest of more than 10% in more than one cultivation facility license, one processing facility license, or more than 5 dispensary licenses. As a residency requirement, there is a 3-year residency requirement for any individual to apply for a facility license. And for business entities, it will be required that at least 35% of the entity's equity ownership is held by a 3-year Mississippi resident. For micro cultivators and micro processors, that percentage goes up to 100%. Local jurisdictions considerations. Local jurisdictions will be permitted to opt out of allowing licensed facilities with their boundaries, but must do so within 90 days of the effective date of the law. If they decide to allow licensed businesses, they must then enact reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. So some setbacks. No cannabis establishment may be within 1,000 feet of a school, child facility, or church, though a waiver can be sought to lower that to 500 feet. Dispensaries must be a minimum of 1,500 feet from each other. Concentration limits. A medical cannabis establishment shall not sell cannabis flower or trim that has a potency of greater than 30% total THC. A medical cannabis dispensary shall not sell cannabis tinctures, oils, or concentrates that have a potency of greater than 60% THC. Well, that's interesting. And here is the timeline. The MMCA requires that after 120 days from the effective date of the MMCA, the MDOH shall begin issuing licenses for cultivation, processing, testing, research, disposal, and transportation within 30 days of receiving an application. Starting 150 days from the effective date of the MMCA, the MDOR will begin issuing licenses for medical cannabis dispensaries within 30 days of receiving an application. This means that both rules and applications may be released in the next couple of months. Alrighty, and I got 2 articles out of Oklahoma that both kind of pertain to each other, and I will absolutely be making some personal comments about Oklahoma. In a news article out of Oklahoma governor says voters misunderstood medical marijuana ballot measure they approved. The governor of Oklahoma said on Monday, February 7th, that voters were misled when they overwhelmingly approved a 2018 ballot initiative to legalize medical marijuana in the state, arguing that the measure may require legislative reform. He pointed specifically to the relatively low cost of obtaining a cannabis business license compared to other states. And without a cap or marijuana operators in place, he argued that the market has expanded to an unsustainable rate. The governor said, quote, "You know as well as I do that not all of that product is being sold illegally. This is a perfect example of why we need to make sure initiative petitions represent Oklahomans and not out-of-state special interest groups, end quote. And another quote, Oklahomans deserve to know the details before voting to change our Constitution, he said. Quote, while we can't change the past, we can learn from it and improve our future. We're getting the right leaders in place and untying their hands to enforce the laws, end quote. In addition, Oklahoma activists have previously attempted to qualify a legalization measure for the 2020 ballot. They filed a petition to legalize cannabis for adult use in December 2019, but signatures gathered fell short due to part of the procedural delays in the coronavirus pandemic. And the next article that ties pretty closely to this. Oklahoma's loose medical marijuana policies drew ghost owners and tanked prices. So in this article out of Nebraska's public media, here is some tidbits from the article. Row by row, Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs agents and Gavin County deputies cut down 2,500 marijuana plants and loaded them in a dump truck for destruction during an April 2021 raid. The grow operation had an Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority license, but it had not obtained an additional permit from the state narcotics agency, authorities said. Both are required to legally grow marijuana in Oklahoma. Currently, Oklahoma has attracted 8,306 licensed commercial marijuana operators since 2019, outnumbering more populous states like California and Colorado. Observers have referred to Oklahoma as the quote, the only free market marijuana industry in the country, end quote, with 10% of the state's population carrying medical marijuana cards. Regulators estimate that medical marijuana is already a billion-dollar industry in the state, second only to oil and gas. The state laws governing medical marijuana grow operations have led to hundreds of cases of ghost owners, in-state residents who are owners of companies on paper only. The practice has opened the door to out-of-state and foreign-backed companies and individual control large portions of the state's marijuana market. All right, so my personal comments here, because I got a lot. First, the hypocrisy of the state of Oklahoma suing Colorado for our adult use market back in the day when Oklahoma can't even get its act together. I mean, the number of back deals that I have heard of people trading just pounds for ownership is absolutely outrageous. And they try to structure it between like the license versus the entity and the ownership between those two different things. And a lot of times, like I've seen that they're just asking for a certain number of pounds in a month for this quote unquote ownership agreement or ghost ownership. Also, the OMMA did not have privileges to enforce the industry until a recent legislative session. In addition to the lack of ownership requirements control, their testing standards are significantly subpar. I hear stories all the time about Oklahoma growers having a lot of problems with like mold and all of these other things that are just quality control is just not there. A lot of times these new growers are pivoting from other agriculture industries and, you know, cannabis isn't always treated like other agriculture industries. In addition, as we all know at this point, they do not have a centralized seed to sale tracking system to help with customer safety and track product recalls. Oklahoma needs a lot of work, and I foresee the state coming in line with other standards of cannabis regulated markets in the near future, which will ultimately lead to an extinction event for operators who lack quality, structure, and standardization, and most importantly, get in line with the regulatory requirements. South Carolina Senate approves medical marijuana bill, House up next. Per the article, South Carolina senators Wednesday approved the use of medical marijuana in the state on a 28-15 vote that finished a Republican senator's 7-year quest to pass the proposal, but the legislation has some hurdles to pass to become law. Amendments that passed including giving preference to South Carolina farmers to grow the marijuana for the program, to charging a 6% sales tax, to allowing cities or counties to prohibit legal medical marijuana in their jurisdiction. The bill has been the only major item debated by the Senate since January 26. Many law enforcement agencies and religious groups oppose the bill. Critics fear it would set up what some called a quote unquote marijuana industry complex and allow the state to quickly shift to permitting recreational marijuana use. The bill is set to move next to the House, which must approve it before the General Assembly session ends in May, or it will die. Governor Henry McMaster, who said his position on medical marijuana is evolving, but he refuses to say Tuesday what he might do if the bill reaches his desk. In Virginia Senate votes to start recreational marijuana sales this September through current medical dispensaries. The Virginia Senate voted to speed up the timeline for retail marijuana sales on the 15th, approving a plan that would allow existing medical marijuana dispensaries to open sales to the general public in September. The proposed timeline represents a 16-month head start for the businesses over the 2024 start date still contemplated for the broader industry. But while the legislation cleared the Senate on a bipartisan 23-16 vote, its final passage remains far from assured at the halfway point in the Virginia's legislative session. A partial resolution reached in State Inventory Tracking System case, a bulletin released by OMA. On Friday, February 25th, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, OMA, Metric, and plaintiffs reached an agreement allowing Oklahoma's seed-to-sale system to move forward. The agreed order, which is attached below, filed on February 25th in Oklahoma County District Court, lifts the restraining order that blocked OMA from implementing a seed-to-sale tracking and tagging system for the medical marijuana industry. Branwell's Metric, a co-defendant with OMA in the non-vacated restraining order, is OMA's contractor for the program. All medical marijuana commercial licensees have until Thursday, May 26, 2022, to become compliant with Metric's seed-to-sale tracking system. This leaves 87 days left for implementation, which Oklahoma will need every day to prepare for. Quote, lifting this injunction clears the single biggest roadblock to OMA enforcing the law, end quote, said OMA's executive director, Adria Berry. Quote, this is a crucial step towards cracking down on licensees operating illegally or skirting the system within Oklahoma's medical marijuana industry. Come May 27th, we will focus the bulk of our enforcement authority on businesses that are not Metric compliant, end quote. So according to the agreed order signed by District Judge Natalie Mann, licensed medical marijuana businesses have until May 26 to comply with the Metric seed-to-sale tracking system. Dispensaries have until Wednesday, August 24th, to sell or legally dispose of untagged medical marijuana products in their inventory. OMA must conduct at least 5 online seminars by May 26 to educate licensees on their new seed-to-sale system. OMA will ensure adequate call center staff is on hand to respond to questions about seed-to-sale program implementation. OMA will soon provide updates on the implementation of the seed-to-sale tracking system. Commercial licensees will be notified of updates regarding the implementation by email and through updates on the OMA website and social media channels. More details can be found on the seed-to-sale page of the OMA website. And now some federal updates. U.S. House passes Safe Banking Act. The U.S. House of Representatives on Friday passed the Safe Banking Act. This was the first week of February, which would normalize banking and financial services for state-approved cannabis companies for the 6th time, according to a roll call report. The legislation was included as an amendment to the China competition bill. It had previously approved the legislation as a standalone bill as recently as April and as part of the 2022 defense spending bill, but it was omitted from the final version of the final law. The proposal still needs to survive the conference process between the House and the Senate. Some lawmakers in the upper chamber, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Democratic Senator Cory Booker, have said that they might not support the amendment without an effort to pass broader reforms related to federal cannabis laws. Crazy. I'm not very hopeful that this will pass, but we will see. Okay, proposed change. House cannabis banking bill sponsor is quote unquote confident it will advance through Senate despite obstacles. Per the article, the fight continues to get the Senate to pass a marijuana banking reform bill, and the measure's House sponsor says he is quote unquote confident that the opposite chamber will finally take it up. Perlmutter, Democrat in Colorado, has been trying to get the Secure and Fair Enforcement or SAFE Banking Act across the finish line for several years now, and his latest attempt is to pass it as a part of a large-scale manufacturing and innovation bill to which the cannabis language was recently attached in the House. In an interview with Yahoo Finance on Friday, the congressman discussed the prospects of his proposal, which has cleared the House 6 times in some form now. He says that while Senate leadership has insisted on passing comprehensive legalization first, he still sees opportunities to advance his bipartisan incremental reform. Federally owned utility company walks back threat to block electricity for marijuana businesses. A federally owned utility company that recently stirred controversy after signaling that it might refuse to provide wholesale electrical services to state legal marijuana businesses clarified on Thursday that it won't be taking such action. At the same time, it is seeking federal guidance on the matter. Advocates, congressional lawmakers, and a key Mississippi regulator condemned the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, for suggesting that it might turn off the lights on cannabis facilities operating lawfully under state policy. The prior statement from TVA, which cited federal obligations to uphold prohibition, came days after Mississippi's governor signed into law a bill to legalize medical cannabis in the state. TVA is a main supplier of electricity in the Mississippi northern region. But now TVA said in a clarifying statement on Thursday that it has, quote unquote, an obligation to serve our customers with safe, reliable, low-cost energy, and we will continue to do so. There will be no interruption in service because of this newly signed law, end quote. Well, there better not. And you need to come on board with federal legalization, TVA. In the last federal update, a proposed change. Hemp could have more THC under a new congressional bill that aims to fix regulatory issues for expanding industry. Per the article, a new congressional bill seeks to build upon the federal legalization of hemp by providing cannabis businesses with additional flexibility that's been sought after by industry stakeholders, as well as remove a controversial ban on market participation by people with prior drug convictions. Rep. Pingree, Democrat out of Maine, filled the Hemp Advancement Act on Tuesday. The legislation would provide several critical reforms, including by increasing the legal THC threshold for hemp products from the current 0.3% to 1% on dry weight basis. It could additionally upend the growing market for Delta 8 THC products by officially counting the isomer and allowable THC amounts. It would also address an issue related to THC levels for in-process hemp or work in progress. Businesses previously raised concerns about the THC threshold prescribed under existing federal statute because the process of hemp extraction can temporarily raise the THC content in a crop in a way that could make them liable for enforcement action. Under Pingree's bill, in-progress hemp would not be subject to any THC limits as long as the final product doesn't exceed 1%. In my personal opinion here, updating the work in progress regulatory requirement is a big deal. This is a major area where hemp manufacturers run into problems, especially around new isomers such as Delta 8, which absolutely needs to be regulated and tested. This isomer is psychoactive, and every state is treating the isomer differently within hemp and cannabis regulatory frameworks.